My wife mentally checked out of our marriage when I got extremely sick and started having an affair, so I contacted her AP's wife and informed her of everything. We began seeing each other in secret and formulating a revenge plan, and 2 years later, we finally confronted and publicly humiliated them. For the last few weeks, I've been living the raccoon lifestyle. First, because of my raccoon eye bags, and second because, well, actually that's it. It all happened when I, 39, and my wife, 37, noticed I was getting super sick, like red-hot fever, weird stomach pains, random trembling kind of sickness. At the time, we lived in a tiny apartment, worked opposite shifts to save on childcare after our daughter, now 12, was born, and sometimes we struggled to make rent. Well, knowing I couldn't provide for my family made me feel even worse than you can even imagine, and it's not like I had the luxury of lying to myself that she didn't care, because she made it very clear that she did. You see, the very day I was told I may have a deathly illness, she didn't find her comfort in me, or the strength of our relationship. Instead, she took to Instagram. Day after day, I watched as she took photos of herself in the mirror, in the least amount of clothing she could get away with without her page being banned. And of course, I hyped her up, told her she was my princess, but it was like she wasn't even impacted by my compliments anymore. But we were still cuddling at night, and after all, we had a baby together, so I tried to remind myself of that whenever I felt doubt creep into my mind. But then her mother-in-law started coming over. She would sit on the couch and say things like, "My husband would have rather died than let me work a day in my life," or, "If my husband caught me living in an apartment this small, I don't think he'd ever be able to stop crying." At first I thought my wife just wasn't saying anything because she was the shy, unconfrontational type, but one day, when I started coughing up blood, my MIL came over, and instead of her little digs, she asked me if I could help her download Hinge. I watched as she proceeded to create a profile for my wife and set up dates with the richest-looking guys on the app. Meanwhile, my wife sat there watching a movie. My heart broke, and I couldn't help but feel it was my fault for getting so sick, for not being able to be a provider. So from there, I did everything I could for my health. I felt like one of those holistic herbal moms that somehow always go viral on TikTok. Every morning started with a concoction of vitamins, and every night ended with a meditational detox. And for some reason, after a few months, I got a lot better. And I guess I didn't mention this earlier in the story, but because of my sickness, I didn't know if I was going to live or die. So when I found out I was better, I was practically jumping off the walls with excitement. But apparently my wife and her mother didn't feel the same way, because when I broke the news, my mother-in-law's face completely fell. I could have sworn I saw her wipe away a few tears too. And when I looked over to my wife, a wave of sadness swept over her eyes. In the days after, I tried to rebuild the relationship with my wife. I even took out a loan to afford a very fancy romantic dinner on a boat. My wardrobe slowly transformed as I replaced perfectly good clothes with newer styles she approved of, hoping for a compliment that rarely came. But then it escalated. She'd constantly compare me to her boss. Yeah, red flag I completely missed. It was always, Jason would know exactly what I wanted without asking. Or, Jason takes his wife on these amazing surprise dates. She'd come home from work with stories about Jason's thoughtful gestures toward his employees, or the expensive anniversary gift he bought his wife Emma. Every story seemed designed to highlight my inadequacies, and what she said next actually made me wish that I had, in fact, died from my illness. She mentioned how Jason had surprised his team with gourmet coffee and personalized mugs on a particularly stressful day. I brought home her favorite dessert from the bakery across town. Instead of appreciation, she just said, "That's nice, but I'm watching my calories this week. You should have asked first." I threw the pastry away after she went to bed, feeling foolish for trying. "Did you hear what Jason did for Emma's birthday?" she'd ask while we were doing dishes one night. "He flew her mom in from Seattle as a surprise and booked them a spa day together. So thoughtful." I remember the sting of that particular comment. My birthday gift to her that year had been a handmade photo album chronicling our family's journey, with handwritten notes about my favorite memories with her. She had thanked me politely but left it on the shelf, untouched. A week later, she mentioned wanting the new smartwatch her coworker had. I felt like nothing I did measured up to the mythical Jason standard. When I'd ask what she wanted from me, what would make her happy, she'd just say, "You shouldn't have to ask, you should just know." This became her mantra, repeated endlessly whenever I tried to understand what was missing in our relationship. "But I'm not a mind reader," I'd say, frustrated. "Just tell me what you need." "That's exactly the problem," she'd respond, sighing dramatically. "Emma never has to tell Jason what she needs. He just knows." I'd lie awake at night replaying these conversations, wondering when I'd lost the ability to make her happy. We used to function as a unit, intuitively understanding each other's needs. Now I felt like I was constantly failing a test I didn't know I was taking, measured against a standard I could never reach. I bought relationship books, read articles online, even listened to marriage podcasts during my commute. I planned date nights, dinners at restaurants we couldn't afford in our early years, tickets to shows she mentioned wanting to see. I tried to spice things up in the bedroom with new approaches I'd researched. Nothing worked. She either responded with lukewarm appreciation, "That was nice, I guess," or outright disappointment, "I wasn't really in the mood for Italian tonight," or "This show is kind of boring." After one particularly elaborate date night that I'd spent weeks planning, a sunset cruise followed by dinner at the restaurant where we'd celebrated our engagement, she spent most of the evening checking her phone. When I finally asked if something was wrong, she seemed almost surprised that I was bothered. "Work stuff," she explained vaguely. You know how it is. I didn't push it that night. Instead, I watched her face illuminated by the screen's glow, wondering when her work stuff had become more important than our time together. The soft candlelight caught the momentary smile that flashed across her face as she typed a response to someone who wasn't me. The woman I married, the one who used to laugh at my dad jokes and curl up against me on the couch, had transformed into someone I couldn't please no matter what I did. She started working later, attending more team-building events and client dinners. Her texts became shorter, less affectionate. Our physical intimacy dwindled to maybe once a month, always initiated by me, and often met with excuses about headaches or exhaustion. I remember the first time she flinched when I tried to kiss her unexpectedly. That tiny movement, almost imperceptible, hit me like a physical blow. I stepped back, confused, and she quickly covered with a story about being startled. But something had shifted. Her body, once so familiar and welcoming to me, had become a fortress with barriers I didn't understand. We were close friends with her boss and his wife. Our families had been intertwined for years. Jason and Emma had kids roughly the same ages as ours. Their daughter was 13 and their son 9. Our kids played together, had sleepovers at each other's houses. We had regular BBQs in our backyards, went to parks and arcades as a group, even took a joint family vacation to a beach house last summer. I even confided in Jason about our marriage problems during guys' nights out, and he'd give me advice that seemed helpful at the time. Those nights replay in my mind now, colored by bitter hindsight. Jason listening sympathetically as I opened up about my marital concerns, offering me another beer, clapping me on the shoulder with what I thought was brotherly support. I'd drive home feeling lighter, grateful to have such a good friend who understood the complexities of long-term relationships. Meanwhile, he was probably mentally cataloging my insecurities, using them to better position himself with my wife. Women need to feel desired, he told me once while we were having beers on his deck. You have to surprise them, keep them guessing. Relationships get stale when they become predictable. I've tried surprising her, I admitted. She doesn't seem impressed. Keep trying, he encouraged, clapping me on the shoulder. Sarah's worth fighting for. You guys just need to find your spark again. What a guy, right? Giving me relationship advice while sleeping with my wife. I recall one cookout where our families gathered to celebrate the 4th of July. Sarah wore a new sundress I hadn't seen before, her hair styled differently. When she bent down to adjust our daughter's party hat, I caught Jason staring at her, his gaze lingering too long to be casual. I dismissed the unease I felt, telling myself I was being paranoid. Later that evening, when the kids were setting up for the fireworks, I noticed Sarah and Jason standing slightly apart from the group, their conversation too quiet to overhear. When I approached, they seamlessly shifted to discussing work matters, but something in the sudden change of tone felt rehearsed. One night in February, my wife was giggling at her phone in bed. It was almost midnight, and I'd been pretending to sleep while she texted someone for over an hour. When I finally leaned over to see what was so funny, she yanked the phone away and snapped at me. Do you mind? These are private work conversations. Her face was flushed, defensive. The sharpness in her voice startled me. In 14 years of marriage, she'd never spoken to me with such immediate hostility over something so small. The bedroom was dark, except for the blue glow of her phone, highlighting the unfamiliar anger in her expression. Her body language shifted, shoulders tensing, creating physical distance between us in our own bed. The contrast between her earlier laughter and sudden defensiveness was jarring, like witnessing two different people occupy the same space. Something inside me just knew. Call it intuition, or maybe just the culmination of 1,000 little suspicions I'd been suppressing. The next morning, I confronted her directly. Who were you texting last night? I asked while she made coffee. She barely looked up. Just Emma about the kids' spring break plans. At midnight? And it was that funny? What are you implying? Her tone immediately turned hostile. Are you checking up on me now? I just want to see the messages, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She refused, claimed I was being paranoid and controlling. When I pressed, she stormed out of the kitchen, slamming our bedroom door. She left for work early that day, taking her phone to the bathroom during her shower, something she'd never done before. The house felt eerily quiet after she left. I stood in our kitchen, coffee growing cold in my mug, trying to process what had just happened. The woman who once shared everything with me, who used to read me funny texts from friends, who had nothing to hide, was now guarding her phone like it contained state secrets. My stomach knotted as I realized how many small changes I'd rationalized away over the past months. That night, she suddenly offered to let me see her phone, after she'd been home for hours. I scrolled through her messages with Emma, which seemed normal enough, but noticed there were no late-night texts from the previous evening. When I checked her conversations with Jason, they were strictly professional and surprisingly sparse for people who worked closely together daily. The messages were so formal, so impersonal, discussing meeting schedules and project deadlines in the most generic terms possible. For a boss and employee who spent 40-plus hours a week together and whose families regularly socialized, the digital trail was suspiciously minimal. The cleaned-up digital presence felt more incriminating than if I'd found something concrete. See, nothing to worry about, she said smugly. Happy now? I wasn't. Not even close. The calculated strategy behind her actions became clearer in retrospect. She'd likely deleted the incriminating messages, showed me the phone as proof of her innocence, and expected me to apologize for my suspicions. It was gaslighting at its most effective, making me question my own instincts while she controlled the narrative. I nodded and mumbled something about being sorry for doubting her, but internally, something had shifted. Trust, once broken, reveals itself in the questions that linger even after evidence is presented. I'm not particularly tech-savvy, but my buddy Ryan is. He works in digital forensics forensics for a security firm. A month later, after several more suspicious incidents, sudden password changes on all her accounts, her phone always face down, mysterious weekend work emergencies. I invited Ryan over for beers while my wife took the kids to her parents' house. During those anxious weeks of waiting, I started noticing other changes. Sarah had new underwear I'd never seen, delicate, expensive pieces that never seemed to make appearances on our date nights. Her gym schedule changed, but her fitness tracker showed inconsistent workout patterns. She'd come home with subtle makeup still perfect, after supposedly intense exercise sessions. Once, I found a receipt for a hotel parking garage in her car, from a Tuesday afternoon when she'd told me she was at a client meeting across town. "Man, I hate to ask this," I said, after we'd been catching up for a while, "but I need help recovering some deleted texts from Sarah's old phone. She'd upgraded to the latest iPhone the previous month, and had given her old phone to our daughter to use for games, after supposedly wiping it clean." Ryan looked uncomfortable but didn't seem surprised. "You think she's cheating?" he asked directly. I nodded, hating to say it out loud. "With her boss, I suspect." Ryan sighed. "Let me see what I can do. No promises, though." It took him several hours, but he managed to recover fragments of deleted conversations. Not everything, but enough. Messages like, "Miss you already," and "Last night was amazing" between my wife and Jason. References to hotel rooms and inside jokes. A particularly gut-wrenching exchange where she complained about me being clueless and boring in bed. Reading those words, her private assessment of my inadequacies shared with her lover, was like having the foundation of our marriage jackhammered out from under me. The intimate details of our marriage, things I thought sacred between us, had become ammunition in her affair, fodder for their shared amusement. Each recovered message was a paper cut to my dignity, small but agonizingly precise in its ability to wound. I felt physically ill reading them, but thanked Ryan for confirming what I already knew in my heart. The fragments we found confirmed my worst fears. She was having an affair with Jason. "What are you going to do?" Ryan asked before leaving. "Get more evidence," I replied. "Then decide." Ryan clasped my shoulder before he left, his eyes reflecting both sympathy and concern. "Don't let this consume you, Mark. Get what you need, then get out. I've seen people destroy themselves gathering every painful detail." His warning resonated, but I knew I needed irrefutable proof, both for potential legal proceedings and for my own sanity. I couldn't risk her twisting this into some misunderstanding I'd blown out of proportion. I wanted proof that she couldn't wiggle out of, so I waited and watched. 3 days into my investigation, in a moment of weakness or perhaps hope, I bought How to Help Your Spouse Heal from an Affair, thinking maybe we could salvage our marriage if she was truly remorseful. I hid the book in my desk drawer at work, not ready to confront her yet. The pages of that book became both comfort and torment during lunch breaks and quiet moments alone. I highlighted passages about genuine remorse versus regret at being caught, about the years needed to rebuild trust after betrayal. Some days, I'd read about successful reconciliations and feel a flicker of hope. Other days, the clinical descriptions of affair partners' manipulation techniques made me question every moment of my marriage. The book became a roadmap to a possible future I wasn't sure I wanted, but couldn't yet dismiss entirely. That Saturday, she claimed there was an emergency at work, some client crisis that required her immediate attention. I called her office after she left, closed on weekends, as I expected. She didn't answer my calls or texts until late afternoon with a brief, "Still working, don't wait up." I remember sitting at our kitchen table that afternoon, staring at my phone, waiting for a response that would inevitably be a lie. The kids were at a neighbor's house for a play date, and the empty home echoed with the ghosts of our happier days. Family photos lined the walls, smiling faces captured in moments of genuine joy. Had she been thinking of him when we posed for our Christmas card last year? When we renewed our vows on our 10th anniversary? The timeline of her betrayal contaminated every memory, leaving me questioning which moments had been real and which had been performances. She crawled into bed at 2 a.m. after immediately showering, smelling of hotel soap and shampoo rather than her usual products. I pretended to be asleep, my heart pounding so loudly I was certain she could hear it. How many times had this happened without me realizing it? How many showers had washed away the evidence of her betrayal while I slept obliviously next to her? I could feel the mattress dip as she slid under the covers, keeping to her side of the bed we'd shared for years. The physical distance between us seemed fitting now, a tangible representation of the emotional chasm her choices had created. I lay there rigid, controlling my breathing, wondering if she felt any guilt at all as she drifted to sleep beside the husband she'd betrayed just hours earlier. The familiarity of her breathing pattern, once comforting, now felt like another betrayal. How dare she sleep so peacefully after what she'd done? The collaboration. The next morning, with my wife still asleep, I made a difficult call. I'd gotten Emma's personal number from our family contact list and texted her asking to meet privately. Urgent family matter. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop across town. I arrived early, choosing a corner table that offered privacy. My hands trembled slightly as I ordered coffee, the reality of what I was about to do, potentially altering multiple lives permanently, weighing heavily. A framed quote on the cafe wall caught my eye. "Truth is rarely pure and never simple." Oscar Wilde's words felt painfully appropriate for the moment. Emma arrived looking tired but put together, ordered a latte, and sat across from me with wary eyes. "What's going on, Mark? You sounded serious." I took a deep breath. "I think our spouses are having an affair." Her expression didn't change immediately, which surprised me. Then she closed her eyes briefly. "What evidence do you have?" The lack of shock in her reaction told me volumes. She hadn't known for certain, perhaps, but she'd suspected, just as I had. The confirmation seemed to settle over her like a heavy blanket, expected but still suffocating. Her composed exterior showed the slightest crack when she gripped her coffee cup tighter, her knuckles whitening momentarily. I showed her the recovered text fragments, explained the pattern of suspicious behavior. As I spoke, Emma's composed facade began to crack. She revealed she'd had her own suspicions for months: late work nights, mysterious text messages, a sudden password change on Jason's phone. "I told myself I was being paranoid," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "that it was just work stress making him distant." "I did the same thing," I admitted, feeling a strange kinship with this woman I'd known for years but never truly connected with until now. "I kept making excuses for behaviors that didn't make sense." Emma shared details I hadn't known. Jason had opened a separate credit card 6 months ago, claiming it was for simplified business expenses. He'd started going to the gym at odd hours, buying new clothes, and paying unusual attention to his appearance. Once devoted to family weekends, he now found reasons to disappear for hours on errands that yielded no visible results. She was blindsided by the concrete evidence, but agreed we needed more before confronting them. We devised a plan to gather information separately, then reconnect in a few days. Emma would check their finances for unexplained charges, and I'd monitor my wife's movements more carefully. "I never thought we'd be planning something like this," Emma said as we were leaving. Her eyes, red-rimmed but determined, met mine. "They've made us into detectives in our own marriages." That statement resonated deeply. The innocence of trust had been stripped away, replaced by hypervigilance and suspicion. Every phone notification, every late meeting, every work trip now required verification. We had become unwilling participants in a surveillance operation we never asked for. 3 days later, Emma called me. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. "I found everything," she managed to say. "Their messages, photos, everything." Her pain traveled through the phone, raw and visceral. I heard objects being knocked over as she moved around her house, her breathing erratic. In that moment, I realized that while I'd been processing my suspicions for weeks, Emma was experiencing the full traumatic impact of discovery in real time. The concrete proof had shattered whatever thin hope she might have been clinging to. We met again, this time at a park where our kids had played together countless times. Emma had hit the jackpot in the worst possible way. Jason hadn't even bothered deleting their messages on his iPad, which he'd left logged into his accounts while on a business trip with my wife. The affair had been going on for 2 years. They'd been sleeping together in our homes while our families had dinner in the next room, in hotels during supposed conferences, during business trips that were actually romantic getaways, everywhere. The park bench where we sat had our children's initials carved into it from a summer playdate years earlier. Now it supported 2 broken spouses, comparing evidence of the ultimate betrayal. The irony wasn't lost on me. This place of innocent family memories had become the setting for uncovering our partner's deceit. Emma showed me screenshots of conversations that made me physically ill, explicit messages describing their encounters, discussions about how to avoid suspicion, even jokes at our expense. My wife had sent him photos I'd never seen, wearing lingerie I didn't recognize. They'd created a shared photo album with hundreds of images documenting their relationship: dinners, hotel rooms, selfies in places I thought she'd gone alone or for work. One photo particularly haunted me: Sarah and Jason at a beachfront restaurant I recognized from our last family vacation. While Emma and I had taken all 4 kids to the aquarium that day, our spouses had apparently sneaked off for a private lunch, documented with intimate selfies and knowing smiles. They'd been conducting their affair right under our noses, using our family gatherings as cover for their rendezvous. Most devastating was a conversation where Jason asked if she ever planned to leave me. Sarah: "It's complicated. The kids adore Mark. He's a good father." Jason: "But do you love him?" Sarah: "Not the way I love you. But he's stable, reliable. He'd never understand what we have." Jason: "So we keep things as they are? Our secret?" Sarah: "For now, maybe always. Is that enough for you?" Jason: "As long as I have you, even part-time, I'm happy." Reading those words was like having my identity redefined without my consent. In our marriage, I'd seen myself as her partner, her lover, her confidant. Now I learned I was merely her stability provider, the reliable caretaker who maintained her comfortable life while she sought passion elsewhere. I'd been relegated to a supporting role in my own marriage, unaware that the script had been completely rewritten. Emma and I were devastated, but united in our response. If they wanted each other so badly, they could have each other, minus us, and half their assets. We quietly prepared divorce papers while acting normal around our spouses. I consulted with a lawyer who specialized in infidelity cases, gathering all the evidence into an airtight file. Emma did the same. My attorney, a no-nonsense woman with 20 years of experience in divorce law, reviewed our evidence with clinical detachment. "This is more than sufficient," she confirmed, organizing the screenshots into categories. "The duration and extent of the affair will be relevant to the judge." She recommended filing for divorce on grounds of adultery rather than irreconcilable differences, explaining that while it might not significantly impact the financial settlement in our state, it would create a clear record of why our marriage ended. The hardest part was maintaining normalcy around the kids and our cheating spouses. I still kissed Sarah goodbye in the mornings, helped with homework, and attended my son's baseball games, all while knowing she was texting her lover throughout the day. I caught her smiling at her phone during our daughter's dance recital, and it took every ounce of self-control not to snatch the device and throw it against the wall. During those weeks of pretending, I developed a strange double consciousness. One part of me going through the motions of family life, while another part observed everything with detached awareness. I became an actor in my own home, performing the role of unsuspecting husband while gathering evidence for my exit. Each family dinner felt surreal, watching Sarah laugh with our children, knowing she was living a complete double life. The cognitive dissonance was exhausting. "Something funny?" I'd asked, and she'd quickly darkened the screen. "Just a meme from work," she'd replied smoothly, the lie effortless after so much practice. Her ability to transition seamlessly between loving mother, attentive wife, and secret lover was disturbing to witness. The compartmentalization required for such deception seemed almost pathological. This woman I'd shared my life with for 14 years had developed an entirely separate identity I knew nothing about, maintaining elaborate fictional narratives to support her double life. The Sarah I thought I knew, honest to a fault, unable to keep even birthday surprises secret, had been replaced by a skilled liar who could look me in the eyes while betraying me. The payback. Through Emma's continued monitoring of Jason's messages, we discovered our spouses had booked another weekend getaway at a luxury hotel across town, using his corporate card that Emma had access to through their joint account. The reservation was for the upcoming weekend, when Sarah had told me she was attending a marketing conference in Chicago. I had even offered to drive her to the airport. "Don't be silly," she'd said. "I've booked a car service. You focus on the kids." Her elaborate lie included fabricated conference details, a fake hotel reservation email she'd accidentally left open on her laptop for me to see, and even a printed agenda she'd left on the kitchen counter. The effort invested in deceiving me was almost impressive in its thoroughness. She'd created a complete alternate reality, carefully constructed to maintain her freedom to pursue her affair. The betrayal was so calculated, so cold. They'd planned every detail. Emma and I finalized our strategy. We wouldn't confront them separately or privately, where they could manipulate us or beg forgiveness without consequences. We would catch them together, with official witnesses present. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Emma asked during our final planning call. "Once we do this, there's no going back. No possibility they can explain it away." "I don't want to go back," I replied, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "I just want the truth acknowledged before we move forward." We discussed the logistics carefully, timing our arrivals, bringing the proper documentation, maintaining composure regardless of their reactions. Emma worried about breaking down if Jason tried to manipulate her emotionally. I worried about losing my temper if Sarah attempted to blame me for her choices. We promised to support each other through whatever happened. Friday arrived. Sarah kissed me goodbye with her suitcase packed for Chicago, even asking me to help load it into the rideshare car. I hugged her tight, wondering if she felt any guilt at all. The embrace felt hollow, her body tense against mine. Did she feel any conflict in that moment? Any hesitation about the elaborately constructed lie she was living? The woman in my arms, wearing the perfume I'd given her for Christmas, carrying the luggage we'd bought together for our anniversary trip, was about to meet her lover using a cover story that involved abandoning her family for the weekend. The cognitive dissonance must have been staggering, yet her goodbye was flawless, complete with reminders about our son's soccer practice and our daughter's homework schedule. "Have a productive conference," I said, watching her check her makeup in her compact mirror. "Thanks, I'll call when I land," she replied, another casual lie. I watched the car drive away, struck by the symbolism of the moment. She thought she was leaving for a passionate weekend with her lover, unaware that she was actually departing our marriage for good. The suitcase I'd helped load contained not just clothing, but the last vestiges of our life together. I waited 2 hours, confirming through the hotel's website that the reservation was active and they had checked in. Then I drove to the address with a sheriff's deputy who had agreed to serve as an official witness. The deputy was professional but sympathetic when I explained the situation. I had the divorce papers in a manila envelope, my hands shaking slightly as I handed them to the server. The drive to the hotel felt surreal. Traffic lights, pedestrians, normal Friday activities continued around me, while my life was about to change irrevocably. I rehearsed what I might say, how I would react to different scenarios. Would she cry, rage, beg forgiveness? The uncertainty created a nervous energy that left me feeling slightly detached from reality, observing events from outside myself. We arrived at the hotel, a sleek downtown establishment with a rooftop pool, where I imagined they had already celebrated their secret rendezvous with champagne. The front desk was reluctant to help until the deputy explained the legal situation. They called up to the room, informing Mrs. Turner that her husband was in the lobby with important documents. The minutes waiting in that lobby stretched endlessly. Business travelers checked in and out, oblivious to the drama unfolding. A family with excited children prepared for a weekend adventure. Ambient music played softly overhead, and I stood there, outwardly calm, but internally bracing for a confrontation that would permanently alter multiple lives. The look on my wife's face when she came down to the lobby in just a bathrobe was priceless. First confusion, then shock, then panic. Her hair was wet from the shower, and she clutched the robe tightly around herself when she saw the uniformed deputy beside me. Her transformation was immediate and dramatic, from relaxed lover to cornered spouse in seconds. Her eyes darted around the lobby, likely checking if Jason had followed her down. The woman who had meticulously constructed elaborate lies for months suddenly had no prepared script for this scenario. Her carefully managed double life collapsed in an instant, leaving her exposed not just physically in her hasty attire, but emotionally, as the truth laid bare. "Mark, how did you?" she stammered, looking wildly around the lobby as hotel guests stared curiously. The server stepped forward, handing her the envelope. "Sarah Turner, you've been served with divorce papers on grounds of adultery." She grabbed my arm, begging for a chance to explain. "Mark, please, this isn't what it looks like. We need to talk privately." Her desperate attempt to regain control of the narrative was almost pitiful. Even now, caught literally fresh from her lover's bed, wearing hotel-provided attire, she thought she could convince me to doubt the evidence of my own eyes. The audacity of her denial confirmed I was making the right decision. I simply said, "You had an affair. I'm leaving you. Simple. You don't understand." She started crying, those tears that had always softened me before. "It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything." Each denial only reinforced the extent of her betrayal. A mistake happens once. A deliberate choice repeated over years is a life strategy. Her immediate pivot to minimizing the significance of her affair, rather than acknowledging its devastating impact, revealed her priorities. She wasn't sorry for hurting me. She was sorry for getting caught. 2 years isn't a mistake, Sarah. It's a choice you made every day. Her expression hardened, the vulnerability vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. The theatrical tears dried up instantly, replaced by cold calculation. I was witnessing yet another transformation. From caught cheater to aggressive accuser in mere seconds. She switched tactics instantly, her face hardening. "This is your fault, you know. If you had been more attentive, more exciting, I wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere." You pushed me into his arms. I walked away while the sheriff kept her at bay as she started screaming that it was my fault somehow, that I had driven her to cheat by being emotionally unavailable. Hotel security appeared, concerned about the disturbance. I heard her threatening to call the police, ironically unaware that law enforcement was already present. As I left the hotel, I could still hear her voice echoing through the lobby, cycling rapidly through various manipulation tactics, from tearful pleas to aggressive blame shifting to threats. Each contradictory approach confirmed I'd made the right decision. No relationship built on such fundamental dishonesty could ever provide the authentic connection I deserved. Meanwhile, Emma was executing her part of the plan. Jason panicked when my wife called him from the lobby and rushed back to their home, where Emma was waiting with her own server and a paralegal to witness the delivery. They never saw it coming. According to Emma, Jason tried to deny everything at first, then broke down crying when she showed him the evidence she'd gathered. He begged for another chance, claimed it was just physical, and meant nothing. Emma later told me he'd arrived home in such a hurry, he was still buttoning his shirt, his hair wet from the same shower my wife had just emerged from. The parallel confrontations occurring simultaneously across town created a poetic justice to the situation. No private reconciliations, no opportunity to coordinate their stories, just the raw truth exposed in different locations. "You told her you loved her," Emma had replied calmly, in writing, hundreds of times. Emma described how Jason had collapsed onto their sofa, head in hands, when he realized the extent of the evidence she possessed. His carefully constructed narrative, the devoted husband temporarily led astray, crumbled when confronted with his own words, professing eternal love to his mistress. The months of elaborate deception, the calculated betrayal of both families, the strategic manipulation of everyone's trust, all laid bare in documented detail. The aftermath: my divorce proceedings are moving quickly and will be finalized soon. Emma's might take longer as Jason is fighting for more favorable terms. Neither of our spouses wants a divorce, claiming it was just physical, and that marriages survive worse. My wife insists she never planned to leave me, and that she's not that person anymore. The immediate backpedaling from both of them was almost comical in its predictability. The affair that had been important enough to lie about for years, to risk their families and reputations for, suddenly became meaningless when discovery threatened their comfortable lives. The passionate love declared in countless messages transformed overnight into a mistake they wanted to minimize. "I made a terrible mistake," she says daily, following me around the house where we still live temporarily until the divorce is settled. "But it made me realize how much I truly love you and our family." Her sudden rediscovery of love for our family coincided precisely with the consequences of her actions becoming real. The timing of her epiphany was suspiciously aligned with the loss of her security and social standing rather than genuine remorse for the pain she'd caused. "No," I've told her repeatedly. "Getting caught made you realize what you stand to lose. There's a difference." Each time I say this, she looks genuinely confused, as though the distinction escapes her. The self-awareness required to understand how her actions impacted others seems beyond her emotional capacity. Her focus remains entirely on what she wants: forgiveness without accountability, reconciliation without consequences, restoration of her comfortable life without the messy work of rebuilding trust. We still live in the same house temporarily due to legal complications and considerations for the kids, though we sleep in separate rooms. She's going to individual therapy twice weekly, reading the books I bought months ago, begging for another chance. She leaves notes around the house apologizing, reminiscing about our happy memories, promising to spend her life making it up to me if I'll just reconsider. The psychological warfare is subtle, but relentless. She strategically places these notes where the kids might see them, creating an impression that she's trying while I'm being unforgiving. She mentions her therapy insights at dinner, ensuring the children hear about her growth and commitment to change. Each gesture seems calculated for maximum manipulation rather than genuine healing. Remember our trip to the Grand Canyon? One note read, "You held my hand at the edge because you knew I was afraid of heights." That's the man I married, the man who always protected me, even from my own fears. The cruel irony of that particular message wasn't lost on me. She was appealing to my protective instincts, the very quality she had exploited to maintain her double life. For years, I had protected our family, maintained our home, supported her career advancement, all while she betrayed the foundation of our relationship. Now she wanted that same protection to shield her from the consequences of her choices. I crumpled it up without responding. These daily performances exhaust me. Her dramatic sighs when I pass without acknowledgement, her tearful phone calls to friends within my earshot, her ostentatious displays of remorse when the kids are watching. The calculated nature of her contrition only reinforces my decision to leave. Even in her supposed redemption efforts, she's still performing rather than authentically engaging with the damage she's caused. She's called me bitter and resentful, then apologized profusely, thrown herself at me sexually. I refused, and demanded I stop talking to Emma, claiming our friendship is inappropriate and sends the wrong message to the kids. Last week, she ambushed me in the kitchen late at night, wearing lingerie I'd never seen before. When I immediately turned to leave, she grabbed my arm, tears streaming down her face. "Don't you find me attractive anymore?" she asked, as though my physical desire for her was the issue rather than the complete destruction of trust between us. The disconnect between her understanding of our problems and the reality was staggering. "The irony of you lecturing anyone about inappropriate relationships is astounding," I told her. Her hypocrisy reaches new heights daily. She monitors my phone calls, questions where I go, and expresses concern about my emotional state whenever I spend time with friends. The woman who maintained an elaborate secret life for years now demands complete transparency from me, claiming it's necessary for our healing process. The entitlement behind her expectations is breathtaking. She wants couples therapy, has researched the best marriage counselors in the city, and left brochures on my desk. But I've heard too many stories about therapists focusing on both parties' contributions to the marital breakdown and blaming the betrayed spouse for not meeting emotional needs. I refuse to be told that her affair was partly my fault. My attorney warned me about this exact strategy. Cheaters often push for counseling, not for genuine reconciliation, but to diffuse responsibility. They want to reframe their choice to betray as a symptom of relationship problems rather than a character issue, she explained. Don't let her narrative become the official record of what happened here. Everyone from friends to my own mother says I'm moving too fast, that people make mistakes, and that my wife clearly loves me. My mother actually said, all men stray sometimes. At least she wants to fix things. The gender double standard in these responses is infuriating. Friends who would support a woman leaving her cheating husband without question urge me to consider reconciliation. Their well-meaning advice often comes with subtle implications that I share responsibility for her choices, or that maintaining the family unit should outweigh my personal dignity. Would you say that if I had been the one cheating? I asked her. She had no response. The uncomfortable silence that followed spoke volumes. My mother, born in a different generation with different expectations of marriage, couldn't articulate why her standards differed based on gender. The conversation revealed not just her outdated views, but the broader societal expectations that men should overlook betrayal to preserve family stability, regardless of the personal cost. I keep saying I refuse to be anyone's backup plan or safety net. The messages I saw made it clear I was the reliable husband who paid bills and raised children while she pursued passion elsewhere. She didn't choose me when she had options. She's choosing me now because her fantasy life imploded. The fundamental truth she won't acknowledge is that reconciliation isn't something she's entitled to simply because she wants it. Trust, once shattered so completely, doesn't reassemble with apologies and promises. Her assumption that I should eventually forgive her reveals a profound self-centeredness, as though my pain exists primarily as an obstacle to her happiness rather than a legitimate response to profound betrayal. Emma and I still talk regularly, supporting each other through the legal and emotional challenges. We meet for coffee weekly to compare notes on our proceedings and discuss how our children are coping. It drives my wife crazy. She's convinced we're planning a revenge affair or developing romantic feelings amid our shared trauma. Our friendship with Emma is built on mutual respect and the unique understanding that comes from shared experience. We're careful to meet in public places and maintain appropriate boundaries, aware that our spouses would seize on any impropriety to deflect from their own actions. There's something healing about connecting with someone who truly understands the specific pain of this situation without requiring explanations or justifications. Is there something going on between you two? She demanded after I returned from having lunch with Emma. Unlike you, I don't jump into bed with my friends' spouses, I replied. She flinched at that. That's not fair. We weren't thinking clearly. For 2 years? I laughed bitterly. That's some sustained confusion. The absurdity of her defense highlights how detached she remains from the reality of her actions. A 2-year affair involving hundreds of deceptions, elaborate planning, and ongoing risk assessment wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a deliberate lifestyle choice made repeatedly over time. Her attempt to minimize it as temporary confusion insults my intelligence and reinforces my decision to leave. Emma and I have developed a friendship built on mutual respect and shared experience, but that's the last thing on my mind. I don't need to stoop to their level or complicate an already painful situation. We're just two people helping each other through hell. What our spouses can't seem to comprehend is that our connection isn't about them. It's about healing from similar wounds inflicted by people we trusted completely. We're not plotting revenge or building a romantic relationship. We're simply supporting each other through the dismantling of lives we thought were secure. There's a unique comfort in talking to someone who understands exactly what you're experiencing without needing the context explained. Where I stand, the kids know what's happening in age-appropriate terms. We sat them down together, Sarah and I, and explained that we would be living apart soon. We didn't use the word affair, but told them that Mom and Dad had grown apart and made choices that meant we couldn't be married anymore. That conversation remains one of the most painful moments of this ordeal. We gathered in our living room, the four of us sitting in the same space where we'd opened Christmas presents and celebrated birthdays. Sarah had insisted on wearing her wedding ring for the discussion, a detail that struck me as both manipulative and sad. Her eyes were red from crying, though I noticed she'd still applied makeup carefully before this impromptu family meeting. "Did you stop loving each other?" our daughter asked, already showing the emotional intelligence that makes me so proud. The perceptiveness of her question cut straight to the heart of the matter. Children have an uncanny ability to identify the core issue, while adults dance around uncomfortable truths. Her direct question momentarily silenced both Sarah and me as we struggled with how to answer honestly without causing unnecessary pain. "We'll always love you both more than anything," I answered, sidestepping the real question. Our daughter's eyes moved between us, clearly unsatisfied with my deflection, but recognizing this wasn't the moment to press further. The emotional maturity she displayed, holding her deeper questions while accepting what we could offer, made my heart ache. Children shouldn't have to navigate adult complexities with such careful consideration. "But families are supposed to stay together," our son argued, tears streaming down his face. Sarah tried to hug him, but he pulled away, a rejection that visibly crushed her. She's been trying desperately to maintain her relationship with the children, overcompensating with gifts and special outings. They're confused and hurt, but resilient. They wish we'd stay together, but seem to understand why that can't happen. My son's resistance to her comfort wasn't a calculated rejection, but an instinctive response to sensing inauthenticity. Children develop a remarkable radar for emotional dishonesty. While he couldn't articulate why he pulled away, his body language communicated what words couldn't. Something fundamental had shifted in his trust of his mother, even without knowing the specific reason for our separation. Our daughter overheard an argument where Sarah was pleading for another chance, and later asked me privately, "Mom did something really bad, didn't she?" I struggled with how much to share. "She broke a promise that's very important in marriage," I finally said. My daughter nodded solemnly. "Like when she promised to only love you?" The wisdom in her simple observation left me momentarily speechless. Her ability to distill complex adult situations to their essence, broken promises, violated trust, was both impressive and heartbreaking. Children understand more than we give them credit for. At the end of the day, this wasn't a drunken mistake or one-night stand that could be attributed to temporary insanity or overwhelming temptation. This was 2 years of lying, gaslighting, and comparing me unfavorably to the very man she was sleeping with. How do you come back from that level of betrayal? The calculated nature of their affair required thousands of individual decisions to deceive. Each text message, each fabricated work emergency, each hotel reservation represented a conscious choice to betray our family. The affair wasn't something that happened to Sarah. It was something she actively constructed and maintained daily for years, while simultaneously criticizing me for not meeting standards her lover supposedly exemplified. Last night, Sarah found me alone in the kitchen after the kids were asleep. "I know you don't believe me," she said quietly, "but I never stopped loving you. What Jason and I had, it wasn't real. It was an escape, a fantasy." I studied her face in the dim kitchen light, searching for the woman I thought I'd married. Did she actually believe what she was saying? Could she genuinely not understand that claiming to love me while systematically betraying me for years made no sense? The cognitive dissonance required to maintain her self-image while acknowledging her actions seemed beyond her capacity. "That's worse," I told her. "You risked everything we built for something that wasn't even real to you." Her response revealed volumes about her character. By dismissing her affair as not real, she attempted to minimize its significance rather than taking full responsibility for her choices. The relationship was real enough for her to invest years of deception, to risk her marriage and family, to construct elaborate lies, but now she wanted to reframe it as meaningless to facilitate her desired outcome. "People survive affairs all the time," she insisted. "Marriages can be stronger afterward." "Maybe some can," I acknowledged, "but I'll never trust you again. Every business trip, every late night at work, every text message would trigger suspicion. That's not a marriage, it's a surveillance operation." This is the fundamental reality she refuses to accept. Trust, once shattered so completely, doesn't simply reassemble because the betrayer wishes it so. The neural pathways of suspicion have been deeply carved, the instinctive faith in her word permanently altered. Any future relationship would be built on a foundation of verified information rather than trusted communication, a fundamental shift she seems unable to comprehend. "I still love love her, or at least the woman I thought she was, but I also hate what she's done and who she revealed herself to be. She's trying hard now, but only because she got caught. If I hadn't found out, she'd still be with him this weekend, coming home to me with hotel soap on her skin and lies on her lips. The duality of my feelings is perhaps the most painful aspect of this experience. I'm grieving not just the end of my marriage, but the death of my perception of who Sarah was. The woman I fell in love with, the one who stayed up all night with our sick daughter, who celebrated my career milestones with genuine pride, who once seemed to value honesty above all else, exists now only in my memory, replaced by someone capable of sustained deception and emotional cruelty. After reading all your comments, I'm more convinced than ever that divorce is the right path for me and my kids. The messages Emma found showed the true nature of their relationship, not a momentary lapse, but a calculated deception maintained daily for years. They discussed how to better hide their affair, laughed about our ignorance, and created elaborate systems of alibis. My wife even had a separate email account and messaging app just for communicating with Jason. One particularly damning exchange revealed they had created code words to use in front of Emma and me. Reviewing the Henderson project meant meeting at their regular hotel. Supply chain issues indicated one of us was getting suspicious and they needed to be more careful. They had turned deception into a game, complete with inside jokes about their successful manipulations. How could anyone rebuild a relationship after discovering that level of calculated betrayal? A marriage built on lies isn't worth saving, no matter how remorseful she claims to be now. I deserve honesty, faithfulness, and respect, the basic foundations of any relationship. My children deserve to see their father modeling self-respect and healthy boundaries. Staying would teach them that breaking trust has no real consequences, that promises can be violated without permanent repercussions. The legacy I want to leave my children isn't one of martyrdom, sacrificing my dignity and happiness to maintain a facade of family unity. Instead, I want to show them that healthy relationships require mutual respect, honesty, and integrity. By establishing clear boundaries about unacceptable behavior, I'm teaching them to value themselves enough to expect ethical treatment from their future partners. Yesterday, Sarah left a photo album on my bed, pictures from our wedding and early years together. I returned it to her room untouched. Those memories belong to a relationship that no longer exists, with a woman who turned out to be someone else entirely. The album represented another manipulation attempt, using nostalgia to bypass the present reality, encouraging me to confuse who we were with who we are now. The young couple in those photos, idealistic, honest, truly committed to each other, no longer exists. One half of that partnership systematically violated every promise captured in those images. Looking back would only keep me trapped in a narrative that's been proven false. I'm focusing now on building a new life, finding an apartment close to the kids' school, establishing a co-parenting routine that minimizes contact with Sarah, and reconnecting with friends I'd neglected during my marriage. I've started therapy to process my anger and grief, not to reconcile, but to heal. Some days are harder than others, but I'm committed to moving forward. My therapist has been instrumental in helping me recognize the gaslighting and manipulation I experienced throughout the affair and its aftermath. She's provided techniques for maintaining boundaries during co-parenting interactions and strategies for supporting the children through this transition. Most importantly, she's validated my decision to prioritize truth and authenticity over maintaining a fundamentally compromised relationship. When the divorce is finalized, I plan to take a trip alone, something I've never done. Maybe hiking in Colorado or surfing in California, activities Sarah always vetoed as too dangerous or impractical. It's time to rediscover who I am outside of the relationship that defined me for 14 years and to build a future based on truth rather than illusion. The prospect of solo travel, making decisions based solely on my own interests and desires, represents a freedom I haven't experienced in my adult life. I married young and moved directly from my parents' expectations to partnership compromises. Now, at 39, I have the opportunity to discover who I am when not defined by others' perceptions or needs. It's terrifying and exhilarating simultaneously. This journey isn't what I would have chosen, but I'm determined to emerge stronger, wiser, and more authentic than before. The betrayal that shattered my marriage has also broken open possibilities for growth I might never have explored otherwise. The path forward isn't clear yet, but it's mine to determine based on truth rather than deception, and that, ultimately, makes it the right direction, regardless of its challenges.